that the center and state governments, they are simultaneously empowered under the Constitution to establish and manage institutions. And therefore, we have institutions which have been established in the central sector, that is by the center through the central legislation, and also the states. This process, in all, we have more than 1,000 universities in the country. We have more than 45,000 colleges, in the whole country. At the same time, we have over 12,000 stand-alone institutions that is quite independent. I mean, this is what they call. We have under the center, the central universities, about 42. We have also the deemed universities. They are called deemed universities. They are in the central sector, but they are largely the private institutions, self-financing institutions. Again, we have the IITs and IIMs and also AIMS, the medical institutes, which all come under the central sector. At the same time now, we have also the state universities, which there are over 350 state universities. We have around 200 private universities, and we also have the open universities. There are 14 open universities in the central sector, and there is one university, open university in the central sector, that is Indira Gandhi National Open University. And many of the universities are also allowed to offer distance education program through the open and distance learning systems. So this is how briefly we have the institutions which are established and managed by both the centers. We have the conventional universities and we have the open universities. And we also have another category that is called the agricultural universities. There are around 130 agricultural universities which are again under the central sector as well as the state sector, and they are regulated by the Indian Council for Agricultural Research. So this is broadly the system and structure of the university system. Now, the issues that we face in the higher education is, one is the quality of relevant education that is being imparted by the universities. That is very critical and important issue that need to be seen, because that it is the new knowledge and the technology which is the driving force behind the economy and the whole society. The countries which are very well advanced in new knowledge and technology, they are forging ahead. The countries which are not doing so well in new technology and knowledge, they are lagging far behind. So, hello, 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 hello. Any communication to me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Hello. Can you listen me?
You are audible.
I'm audible, but there was
Yes, sir.
some communication coming. I thought that probably the communication is coming to me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I can. So what I was mentioning was the quality and relevance of higher education is a major issue today, and that has become important because, as you know, the knowledge is growing very fast. Almost every 3 to 5 years, the knowledge is doubling, and the countries which are lagging behind in growth of knowledge and innovation and technologies, they are lagging behind. So therefore, the challenge is to improve, the quality of teaching and learning, which is why we see that we have the large number of graduates, and even the studies show that about 3/4 of them are unemployable even by the MNCs. And at the same time, what we see is that the most of the graduates, they seek employment in the industrial sector, and because the kind of education they have got, they are considered to be unemployable. So we see that there is a massive production of unemployable graduates, which is because the universities have not aligned their activities with the needs of the society and economy. So that has been the major challenge. And that challenge is largely because we see that there is a lack of interface between the higher education institution and the universities. So they are functioning in isolation from each other. Neither the industry has been able to inform the university as to what kind of educated people they require, nor the university has been able to explore with the university as to how they should react uh, area where the government would intervene, create a kind of mandatory system in which the institutions and the business and industry organizations should be working together. Unfortunately, that has not been happening. At the same time, what we have seen in the last few years is that the quality of relevant education has been declining. Is there has been massive commercialization of education because of the private universities and the colleges. They have been largely in offering professional and technical courses. They have been charging higher fees, but yet the quality of education has not been able to improve because they have to make uh, certain compromises to be able to generate surpluses, to be able to generate profits. So their uh, involvement in education, while they have offered huge opportunities for learning, but at the same time, the quality has been sacrificed because of the emergence of uh, a large number of private universities without ensuring quality. And as you know, we have the system uh, for accreditation of universities that is done by the uh, uh, National Accreditation Council, uh, and only one third of the universities and the colleges have so far been accredited, which means that the most of the colleges and the universities, they do not meet the standards of teaching and learning, and which is also obvious from the fact that at least uh, uh, 45% of the teacher vacancies on an average is unfilled so far, and at that I have seen for the last 4 to 5 years that there has not been any attempt to fill up those positions. At the same time, the government has been establishing institutions. The private institutions have also been established without ensuring that there are enough teachers or the infrastructure facilities are likely. So this is an area which we find that the quality of education and its relevance has been a major factor in uh, retarding the progress of higher education and their inability to meet the expectations of the society and economy. And this is why we see there is a massive unemployment. Neither the government has been able to pay much attention to it, nor those who are responsible for providing education within the education system have been able to look into it, which is why there has been a compromise on the quality of education. Now, this is also because of the fact which I wish to mention, because of the lack of funding. One of the reasons that comes is, of course, the governance is one aspect, the way the institutions are governed, and largely the governance is handled by the government because all the vice chancellors are appointed by the government. It is the vice chancellors, who recruit the staff at all levels, and there has been politicization of the campuses where you have the teachers, the students, and the karamcharis all having been associated with some political parties in power, and therefore, the recruitment processes, etc. They are also compromised. You do not have the quality teachers, you do not have the quality staff, and there is a huge corruption in the whole process, beginning from that of admission to that of the recruitment in the universities. That also affects the performance of institutions. Now, I wish to come to the funding part uh, without taking much of your time. Uh, As I mentioned to you that we have the diverse system of education where the center and the state uh, participate in providing education. The funding and the sources of funding and the method of funding is also therefore diverse. The central universities, the institutions within the central sector are looked after by the center. So there are those which are directly funded by the center, that is uh, Ministry of Education. They provide funding for the IITs and IIMs. AIMS, they are funded by the Ministry of Health. The central universities are funded by the UGC. Again, the UGC gets money from the Ministry of Education. There are certain areas which are also funded by the ministry, that is called under the RUSA, Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, which provides on the basis of the formula evolved by the ministry. So there are that area of funding which is partly based on formula, that is under RUSA, and in the rest of the cases, it is what we call the deficit funding. So the teachers' positions, etc., are sanctioned already, and with respect to those, the government provides the fund. And it also gives you an idea why many of the teachers' vacancies are not filled, because the government doesn't provide the money. When they don't have the money, how can they recruit the teachers? And for recruitment processes also, the concurrence of the government has to be obtained. Uh, the deemed universities within the sector, by and large, they are functioning in the private mode, and they are the self-finance, which means that they charge heavy fee from the students, and the students pay either from their own sources or they take students loan. As of now, overall, more than 10% students are taking loan for higher education. But when we see only the technical and vocational courses, that is engineering, management, and medicine, we see that more than 80% students are studying by taking loans, student loans. We have large number of self-financing institutions, which I mentioned to you, private universities. Under the central sector, we have the deemed to be universities, and in the state sector, we have the private universities. They are largely, funded on the basis of the self payment. Many of the central universities also have been asked to organize their own courses and the programs on self-financing basis. So while the government has committed to provide funding to the extent of 6% of the GDP, and that has been said ever since the first education policy, which was adopted in 1968. In second education policy in 86, it was also committed. And again, the government also has committed in new education policy 20 that they will provide 6% of the funding. But unfortunately, this has remained around 3% or so. It has never been raised. So the commitment for funding has never been raised. And now we see that there is a move towards self-financing institutions, both in the central sector as well as in the state sector. Those who the beneficiaries have to pay from either their own pocket or from taking loans. There are huge problems in taking loans, which we may discuss at a later stage. But here I have just chosen to flag off some of the issues that they are there. Now, I have tried to briefly mention the two major problems relating to the quality of education, which is not up to the mark. The reasons being that the infrastructure is lacking, there is a lack of accreditation of the institutions, and there is a lack of focus. The governance is also low due to the interferences of the government, because the government interferes both in recruitment as well as in not providing the funding. At the same time, I have said that our education system has never been provided the kind of money that has been assured from time to time by the central and the state governments, and that is reflected from the huge shortages of teachers, that to the extent of 45% or so on an average basis. I may also mention that in 2008, the government decided to levy cess on income tax for meeting the educational expenditure of the primary, elementary section as well as the higher education. So currently, 4% surcharge is collected uh, for the elementary education, 1% goes for higher education, and 1% recently was announced to for the Ayushman Bharat, that is health sector. Now, the 1% that is collected by the government ever since 2008 to up till now, that money has not been utilized for higher education. Now, the question arises about which I have written earlier, that where does that money go? CAG commented that only 7% of the money that was collected for higher education was used for the purpose for which it was collected. The rest of money, nobody knows where the government has transferred. So we see that some degree of dishonesty, that while people have paid out of their taxes a surcharge for promoting higher education and research, but unfortunately, the money which was collected has not been deployed, has not been used for the purpose of higher education and research. And this is what the controller of accounts, Controller General, has already commented, and it was highly publicized also. Now, coming to the last part of my talk, because I have taken too much time than what I was allotted. One, what is the way forward for improving the higher education system, whether you have the COVID or whether you don't have the COVID? One is to promote entrepreneurial education and training. Without entrepreneurial training and education, without technical vocational education, it is not possible to improve the credibility of higher education and also to make sure that the productivity of the economy increases, because you have to have the qualified technical and manpower. I may mention here that of the total manpower, only 10% or even less are vocationally and technically trained, whereas the corresponding percentage for the developed countries and for the other countries like Korea, China, and Indonesia, it is ranging from 60 to 80%. So those who are working, our working population is not educationally and vocationally trained, and therefore there is need uh, to increase the component, increase the proportion of students pursuing the technical and vocational education. Most of the colleges, which I mentioned to you, 45,000 colleges as of now, they are all arts and commerce. And in this world, which is, as I mentioned earlier, which is driven by the new knowledge and technology, you require technically and vocationally trained people. You know, even if you see the teachers who are well versed in online teaching, they are well equipped to teach, and they have a better chance of employability than those who are expecting that they will be going only in the chalk and talk mode. So the need of hour is to promote entrepreneurial education at all levels. The second, I would say, is to ensure accreditation of the universities and the colleges. For teaching and learning, you need to have, the good library, the good ITC facilities, the good teachers, competent teachers to teach, teachers training facilities, and all that. So without this, it seems quite difficult to promote it. And this is possible only when you also promote, the interface between the institutions and that of the industrial organization. Because ultimately, whether you become an entrepreneur or you seek an employment in the high-paying industry, one would require to have the higher quality of education. And it is for this reason that interface is important to know as to what kind of manpower is required by the industry and business houses. Accordingly, the university should pay. And in lieu of this, the industry can also meet the cost of university education also. So while the university will provide the competent manpower for the industry, which is the profit generating organization, will be able to pay for the quality education produced by the university system. As I mentioned, at least 10% of students now are looking for the education. This proportion is almost 80% in technical and vocational education. And presently, the loan policy we have the mortgage policy that you have to take certain surety, and the interest rate is as high as one pays for the car loans and for the housing loans. That is too high, and therefore, we have been suggesting that the India must switch over from mortgage-based loan to that of the income contingent loan system, which means that after having acquired education, the students will pay in proportion to their income. As you pay, taxes in a graded way, those who earn higher, they pay higher taxes. Those who pay lower, they pay lower taxes. Likewise, the education loan should also be linked to the income. So we call it income contingent loan. Almost 40-50% percent of the countries, largely advanced countries, have switched over to mortgage to income contingent loan. Unfortunately, we have not adopted, and there is no mention in the education policy also as to how to do it, because this will reduce the burden of payment, but at the same time, it will make sure that that the entire country will have the large base of educated people, because most people are not able to pursue higher education because of the cost of education. So the purpose is that let everybody acquire the quality education, but at the same time, as far as the payment of the loans are concerned, it has to be linked to their income as they pay taxes, and they will pay from the future income. It is very critical again to fill up all the teacher vacancies, because as my predecessor said, the teacher is the kingpin of the education system. Without teachers, you really can't either promote quality education or impart education that is required for the society and economy. And unfortunately, 45%, as I said, on an average, there are those universities where the vacancy is not filled as high as 70 to 80%. So that is something which is killing the colleges and the universities and even the lower level of education, because without teachers, really, you can't manage, the university system. The government must commit to fill up the teachers' vacancy, without which I think it is not possible to promote quality education. The new education policy also focuses on allowing the foreign universities, which are of highly rated and high quality education. But now the question is, the idea is very good, but why should the foreign universities come here to do the charity? Because they are functioning on the basis of the revenue that they get from the income taxes and other sources in their home country. And if they come here, they will need to work as a corporate sector and pass on and take back the profits which they to their own country. Here, there is lack of clarity on the whole issue, that on what basis the foreign university will come and function. while we see that the large number of our own universities, they are making money. We have the private universities which have become, the family enterprise, the family business. Uh, I mean, almost all the colleges and the universities which have been established in this country, and they are working on self-financing basis. That is, they are functioning on the basis of the fee that they charge from the students. All the industrial houses, they have established their own institution. They are making profit, what we call that not for profit, but still they are generating profit, and they are increasing their own centers here and there. At the same time, we are expecting, the foreign universities to come in and establish their own center. It is to be seen how that is going to materialize in the future. I think ultimately, I must stop here by saying the, that improving quality of meet the emerging needs of the society and economy is the need of hour. But at the same time, we also need to improve the funding. While the government has not fulfilled its own commitment of meeting the 6% of the GNP, at the same time, it has allowed commercialization of education by way of encouraging the private universities to come in and make huge profits without assuring the quality. And at the same time, the student loan policy is quite unfavorable, especially to those who are coming from the middle and the lower middle classes, because they are paying as high taxes as one pays for the car loans and the housing loans without assurance of the employability. And it is in this context that I suggested that income contingent loan policy probably may meet some of the expectations of the society. With these words, I stop here. If you have any question, queries, I will be happy to clarify. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful discussion. You have highlighted some prominent issues in fund economics aspect of education, like emergence of large number of institutions without quality, large number of vacancies not fulfilled by the universities and government, and 6% of GDP to education. It is a promise by government of India. And in 2008, levied tax on education and currently earning 4% of tax, but some dishonesty of government, as only 7% of the education cess has been utilized. Rest money, nobody knows where it is. And you have highlighted the entrepreneurial training who been imparted to increase the proportion of technical education. And you have highlighted or suggested to promote the interface between industry and institutions. And importantly, you have also suggested the mortgage policy for education loan should be changed to the income contingent loan. Uh, you have a very wonderful discussion, sir, I must say. And two our participants have asked some queries. One is from Mr. Bilal Hussain, and he asked that what kind of initiative government has been taken into consideration till now to provide online education to those who are below poverty line and students who are from rural areas or remote areas. Sir.
Well, this is a good question, and for poor people, there is nothing, except that one can get 25 kgs of ration. You know, uh, Unfortunately, I have been saying that the Constitution of India has mandated for providing elementary education, and it is almost 70 years plus of our independence, and this has never been fulfilled. So a country, in one of my earliest monograph which I had written, that was in 77, 78. That was on education and economic development. And where I highlighted the linkages between the two and how education was critical. So I had mentioned that a country which cannot provide education to its own people can do nothing. Can do nothing. If you, it is just like that, that if you cannot provide education to your own children, what kind of future you expect? So we have the double standards, that we take care of our own children and try to see that we provide them the best education to them. But when it comes to the nation which has committed under the Constitution, and every politician, every president or the prime minister takes oath under the Constitution that they will follow, they have hardly paid any respect to that, and they have hardly made commitment. It is, as I said, 6% of the GNP is to be allocated to education, or the national system has been developed and promoted just like the caste system in this country. For poor, you have different education and the health system. For the rich, you have the different education system. Now, to say that what kind of facilities the government has provided for online or otherwise for for the poor, I would say that probably the government has done. Probably they would not have been poor what they are today. So it is unfortunate, and we have been discussing in the era of online education that the online digital platforms are not equitably available to everybody. You do not even today have electricity in all the villages, do we? I mean, we say that, okay, over a period of time it has been increasing, but it is not there. Everyone doesn't have the laptop and the mobile phone as you and I have, and it is not available everywhere. The networks are not available, and it has its own cost. The people who are struggling for 2 square meals, can they really afford to pay the cost of education? So the point is, my dear, there is nothing for poor in this country. And to expect that the government will come and do to you, it will never happen, because the governments are never accountable to the people. They make huge promises, they deliver nothing. And as far as education is concerned, I don't know if you have exposure to the elementary education in other countries. I will take example of, in a way, I'm privileged to have visited to almost all the continents of the world, and I have seen some of the education system. I talk to you about UK and the US. In US, with which we say that we are the large democracy, the uniform schools, even the richest and the highly educated people, or even the poorest of the area, they go in the same school. You understand what I mean? They have the
Yes.
uniform school system. Rich and poor, they go in the same school. Yes, there may be there are private schools where children of Trump and Obama may go for various reasons. They may have the security concerns. They may have the. So they required a special education and training for physically challenged people. So they have the private, or they need a special type of grooming. It is quite possible. So what I'm trying to say is that by and large, all of them, they go in the same school. It is also in the Europe. Unfortunately, we do not have it. If you go and see the school conditions in a village, if you go and see, the schools here run by the MCD or the private schools, why is it that no government officer sends his his children to the government schools? Why is it that the no upper middle class people send their children to the same school? I mean, there are schools which are for the super rich, there are those for the middle classes, there are those for the poor. So for the poor, I would say that, look, they have their own MCD at the village schools, nothing else, you know. And the manner in which teaching takes place, you know, you all are teachers, you know, it is so different that it is very difficult to conceive of an idea of providing quality education to those people. I mean, there may be those, there are those who are just lucky, you know, that happens. There are always possibilities. I'm not talking of those, but the large majority of them, they are left behind because the school system is not attractive. The school system is not attractive. I mean that there are no motivational teachers. One, or even if there are, the one teacher is now interacting with, say, hundreds of the students of all classes. It is humanly impossible, you know. So to
Sir,
cut short my
one more
response, I would say
question
that
has been
there's not much for you know, for the, yes, please go.
uh, uh, one of our student. She said, yeah. On the other hand, schools and colleges can't be opened due to the outbreak of pandemic COVID-19. Please suggest what could be done in the way of following scenario.
Well, I don't agree that why the school and colleges should not be open when you can have elections. Did you
Yes,
see
sir.
the election campaign in Bihar very recently, last week? The way people are gathering, the way they are doing it, and many other countries, they have started the school and colleges. Here, there are different concerns. You know, I don't see why they are not doing. You know, it is quite understandable, and for two reasons, I may say that
Yep.
the moment they agree to it, and you allow the social distancing, you know, the classrooms will not be able to accommodate all the students. At the same time, the administration will have to phase out, you know, the morning, evening, and all that. At the same time, you don't have the teachers. You know, we have been talking of the teachers shortages everywhere. The teachers shortages, and in many of the private schools, I am told that the teachers have not been paid. So one, the private institutions, I mean the private colleges, the private universities, they are paying much less than what a teacher gets in the government college. At the same time, for several months, they have not been paid. So how are they going to manage? The moment they open up those institutions, the students are going to demand for their rights. That is, you know, the classrooms with the infrastructure, etc. They are going to ask for the teachers, and where are they? The government cannot appoint teachers overnight. At the same time, they can't create infrastructure facilities, and they cannot make sure that all the campuses have the Wi-Fi and the other infrastructure. So, because the government had its own limitations in opening the schools and the colleges, so there are concerns, administrative, financial, and the political, which is why they are not doing. They don't want that the youth should gather at one place and make all sort of halla gulla. They are able to. So when you can organize people, bring lakhs and lakhs of people, you know, in the election campaign mode, why can't you have hundreds and thousands of students coming in the colleges? Because the students are much more careful about their own health. They are more knowledgeable. They are more aware than those whom you have seen in the election gatherings. So I personally see no problem in opening up the school and the colleges, and also going for you know, teaching, whether it is already happening online, but it can also happen face to face. As I said in the beginning, that you can teach someone how to drive a car, but he can't drive a car unless and until he has had enough practice. You know, you can teach a person how to ride a cycle, but without a practice, he can't ride a cycle. The moment he takes up the handle and puts a leg on the pedal, he will immediately fall. So practice is more important. You can't teach online how to carry out an operation. अगर आपको कहीं जख्म हो गया, कहीं कुछ हो गया, कहीं उसकी सफाई करनी है, ऑनलाइन करेंगे ना, it is so difficult really, and this has to be understood. What is happening is those who are feeling ill, they are visiting the hospitals, and the hospitals have made arrangement of receiving and treating the people at the same time. When it goes
Yes.
to the school system, and at least in colleges, you have the educated, well-aware students of aged 15, 20 to onwards, and they would be taking care of their health very well. They will be rather taking care of their health much better than the people whom we have seen in the election gatherings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for sparing a large amount of time for us.
Your pleasure.
To proceed further, it is time to listen our very special guest and resource person, Professor Kp Suresh, sir. But before I invite him, I would like to share his brief profile. Professor Kp Suresh is the founder, head and dean, School of Education, Central University of Kerala. He did his PhD in 1992 to University of Calcutta. He has 25 experience. Professor Suresh received many awards, including Award for Eminent Educationists in 2015 by Indus Foundation, New Jersey, USA. He has published many papers in reputed, uh, peer-reviewed, refereed national and international journals. He has also presented many papers and chaired many international conferences. I invite Professor Kp Suresh, sir. Over to you, sir.
Most respected and renowned resource persons of the day on the national webinar organized by the Department of Education, Aligarh Muslim University, Murshidabad campus, especially Professor Dr. Muhammad Samadani, Shakil Samadani, Professor Dr. Nasrin Mujib, Professor Dr. Yamam Ansari, dear organizers, Dr. Ahmad, Joint Coordinator Dr. Muhammad Umair, Convener Dr. Elias Ahmad Khan, dear participants online and offline, and my dear friends, greetings from the School of Education, the Central University of Kerala, Kasaragod. Assalamu alaikum. Now it is time, 1 o'clock past 4 minutes. I know that this is a lunch time, भूख लगता है सभी लोगों के लिए, but I may restrict my own talk limited to hardly 15 to 20 minutes. The topic for today's webinar is on post-COVID-19, emergence of a new era in higher education. The topic by itself is indicating as if that we are mentioning coining periods, just like a AD and BC 2000 or BC 2000, AD 2020, so on and so forth. Sometimes some people make literally coinage pre-COVID and post-COVID, pre-COVID 2020 and post-COVID 2021, so on and so forth, whatever may be. But you see, higher education is a place where, am I audible and visible? Hello?
Sir, you are audible, but your camera is not working. I think you are not visible.
Now, whether I am visible? Now?
Not yet, sir.
I am visible?
Not yet, sir. No, no, sir.
I am here, no problem.
Yes, yes.
But
Now we can see you now.
okay. Can hear also audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Am
Audible.
I audible and
Audible, sir.
not
Yes, sir.
visible?
You are audible and visible. Yes, we can see
Good,
you and
good.
we can listen you, sir.
Okay. That means higher education is a portfolio vested with the colleges and universities. That is why higher education is conceived to be the tertiary level of education, the other being the school education and the secondary education, primary education, secondary education, higher education, the tertiary level. And we are speaking and focusing on the post-COVID scenario on higher education, what should be the modalities of instruction, what should be the care and the other parameters to be taken into account, so on and so forth. I may touch partly the school education system. Imagine a student enrolled in Standard 1 in Murshidabad, West Bengal. That student, unlike we people, he or she is not at all being incorporated or mingling with his own classroom teacher. He or she has not seen his own teacher. He or she has not seen her education institution, the school itself. They are sitting before a TV or a mobile smartphone or BB. Those who are having a smartphone as well as a TV sitting with, they are the most blessed population. There are a vast majority who have no access to such smartphones as a television, just like the former is already mentioned here. Admitting that such limitations that are cut to the system of education prevailing in the midst of what we call the COVID-19, what are the plus points that we are adhering to and practicing to hitherto in the case of school education and higher education? In the school education, we started what we call this online learning through certain channels. In Kerala, the Victus channel is doing a wonderful job of providing education, video lessons directly televised from right early morning to evening, and again repetition even on Saturday and Sundays. That is versatile ICT enabled learning for students, that is Victus. This Victus channel is a powerful media as envisaged as an interim arrangement, a stopgap arrangement, not at all a permanent one or a substitute one for the face-to-face interaction mode, the instructional style. There is no doubt that the face-to-face instructional mode is the best mode of instruction, in spite of what we call latest technology, than gadgets that we are utilizing, profusely using in the context of COVID-19 for imparting our educational scenario, instructional style, etc. Many of our teachers are unaware of many of this, what we call the application of these educational gadgets. Many of our teachers are unaware of open educational result that can be utilized as a substitute for many of the academic activities, so on and so forth. And now we have the teacher, concept of a teacher as a more tangible man, a more approachable man, a more skilled man, a more diversified man, a more experienced man, a more grown-up man, a more matured man. We cannot see such a man, the epithets of a teacher, in the online mode of instruction. In the online mode of instruction, some lucky chaps might have the chance of what we call seeing the teacher. Just like in the Murshidabad, this educational video conference, educational national level webinar, many of the learners, I could see that they are not seeing my face, they are not hearing my audible voice, not audible, so on and so forth, even at the higher education level. Then what about at the school education level system? Imagine. And therefore, the fundamental skill that a teacher ought to have is to have the eye-to-eye contact with his students, learners. Eye-to-eye, aankhon se aankhon dekhne padte kadagi. That means in the online learning, the teacher is not able to focus on each and every learner person in this classroom. But in the first instruction, the teacher is able to focus the face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact of his learner. Why? Because eye-to-eye contact is a mechanism of ensuring what you call you are wanted in the class. That means teacher is ensuring the presence and the constant attention of the students in the instructional learning process. But in the online mode of instruction, this is not possible. But at the same time, we can have some other virtues, just like earlier speakers have mentioned. The qualities of a teacher, just like his what you call gestures, what you call cues, verbal cues, and non-verbal cues. These are not at all being acquired by the students in through online learning. Some students may attend the class peripherally, superficially, making the system on in their pocket every time. That means right from 10 o'clock up to 1:30 or 2 o'clock, just like this webinar is going on. We can see that many are attending, but there are clever people who are attending this course, just like making the mobile system on and doing other activities by closing what we call both the audio and video. In that way, they can do many things of their own at their own preferred choices. These are some of the limitations or lacuna wherein which we can ensure the continuity of attention of the learners in the class. And therefore, the teacher who is a what you call a national builder, we always make a comment. Teacher is a nation builder. Teachers can nation, no doubt. The corollary is that the teachers can unmake a nation too. The making of a nation, the shaping of a nation, the building of a nation requires so many skills, diverse skills, that you all on a sudden by a teacher in his classroom activities. This is not made possible in the what you call the online pedagogy, e-content, so on and so forth. And therefore, this can be treated as an interim arrangement up to a vaccine is being invented towards the curation of COVID-19, spread of 19, the pandemic. Nobody predicted of the occurrence of such a mass disease just like COVID-19 in the whole world. Many people, advanced countries, believed that they are too safe, but India proved that India is too safe than so so later what you call more safer than the so-called advanced nations, the whole world. And that is why the what you call the resistant power, the preventive measures that we had taken, that is an admirable task. We made social distancing not as a slogan, but as a practice of living what you call a style of life, social distancing. Though education is meant for social connectivity, still retaining connectivity, we are told to keep social distancing, what you call to break the chain, break the spread of the COVID-19 disease. And we are told what you call wear mask, just like we are wearing shirt or dhotis or kurta, whatever may be. It is also a mandatory condition to wear mask in public sector, wherever in the public space. Why? To prevent the spread of this virus, invisible virus. This invisible virus has blocked and shocked the whole mankind for the past 9 or 10 months, the whole world. Still, we are having and expecting a remedy curation in the invention of a vaccine by around coming January or to February 2021 only. That means we can't wait such a long time. We want our education institutions to be open sooner or later. There is just like a movement, just like a professor had already mentioned that some of the education institutions started functioning. Just like Professor Ansari has mentioned, in the Bihar elections, people are coming in close association. Just as we have seen in America, they have exercised their franchise and of the elected role of the president and vice president and so forth. That means we can open our education institutions right from a secondary standard 8 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12 and the higher education as a whole. That means we can in a phased manner reopening all the education institutions, keeping COVID protocol. It's a mandate. COVID protocol, we cannot open any of our institutions. That means
Yeah,
keeping the
please
protocol
unmute yourself. Please mute,
but
mute.
and practice, we can reopen our education institutions, especially at the higher education level. What we had given so far, the online instruction, that is only a standby instruction and interim arrangement or a stopgap arrangement. We should repeat the whole practical side of what the instructions so far we had provided, because the skills that we have set up for certain types of educational programs that ought to be provided, just like that this Ansari just mentioned, the learning of cycling or the learning of swimming, so on and so forth. It requires practical exposure, and therefore, when reopening our education institutions, we should restart the practical aspects of our course programs right from A to that of Z as the course programs do demand. And therefore, we should take appropriate measures and actions, COVID protocol, reopening of our education institutions in par with what we call the pandemic rising as well as the pandemic being under control. There is a limit we can see. Gradually, the spread of the disease is coming at a lower rate. That means by around December, we can expect what we call lower spread of this COVID-19. And again, we can open our education institutions keeping in mind the COVID-19 protocol. And let us see some of the national educational policy missions that's already been mentioned here by earlier speakers. In our new educational policy, there is a provision for learning of instruction through mother tongue. That means any type of course programs can be taught and learned through the learner's mother tongue. Up to this national policy, prior national policies never do have paved such a space for learning in mother tongue. That is one of the greatest advantage, keeping in view the national educational policy. There are certain movements I can see. Some of the vice chancellors in my own university, we had held several colloquiums on a national educational policy. And one vice chancellor, Andhra Pradesh Tribal University, Professor Kattimani, he is a vice chancellor hailing from a linguistics background. He told especially that the PhD programs can also be carried out in the mother tongue, and the university can employ translators to translate the so-called vernacular language thesis into English or Hindi as per the case demands, the situation demands. In that way, we can think of an educational pattern system through mother tongue, even at the highest levels of degree, the PhD program also. And there is another one, multiple entry and multiple exit to course programs. The learner's space, that means that here, the degree can be acquired at the convenience, at the choice, at the preferences of the learner. At any time he can join, at any time he can leave, but at the same time, he have to complete the course program through this provision, what we call multiple exit and entry, nowhere hitherto seen in earlier practices of education system. And another striking feature is the prominence preference given to early childhood care and education, ECCE. That means from standard, so age 3 onwards, 3+ onwards, children are to be admitted to what we call our education institutions through playway activities, not for straight away the mastery of what we call arts and language. No, through play, the child is not only what we call enjoying, but through play, the child is growing intellectually. The cognitive growth of the child coupled with his hygienic aspect of what we call socialization and mingling aspects surely guarantees the growth of a hygienic learner in the coming days. Our classroom demands what we call the organic classroom, where there is organic teaching, organic teacher, and organic learners. Classroom should be full of what we call activities, choices, and preferences and play activities. That means the teacher is a facilitator he is also mingling along with the students as what he called as a matured adult parent. He is also doing his own what he called knowledge and expertise through the amalgamation and assimilation of a student repertoire of activities and their play actions. That means no child is kept aloof. All children are being duly addressed to according to his own abilities, what he called in Vygotsky psychological principle, zone of proximal development, ZPD. That means a teacher ought to know the zone of proximal development of the learner right from the preschool to that of higher education. That is why in the higher education system, you just consider the PhD guidance. In the PhD guidance, the teacher and the taught, that is a scholar, they are sitting alongside, discussing the topic day and night crucially, and what you call it deeply, sharing their own experiences, criticisms of their own each other, and they progress together for the award of a degree or attaining a degree. That means PhD program is a what you call a serious engagement of the scholar with his supervising teacher, sometimes with other faculties also. That means synergy, country synergy generated in the system of what you call PhD acquisition, and thereby the scholar is being elevated to higher status. That is why in the higher education system, the UGC has paved the way for teaching hours for the research scholars also. Some lecture hours, instructional hours should be set apart for whom the research scholars also. Now the UGC had paved the way for outcome-based evaluation as a declared policy in higher education. That means there should be result-oriented, outcome-based education. The earlier Bloom's taxonomy revisited in the UGC's new concept, what we call outcome-based evaluation. The knowledge aspect with that of the understanding aspect, then the application aspect, then comes what we call evaluation, synthesis, and so on and so forth. Even what we call critical thinking, criticism, that is also one of the elements contained in the outcome-based evaluation. That means our teachers at the higher education level, they should be familiarized with what we call outcome-based evaluation, how to make the perfect evaluation, because evaluation is the culmination of instructional process everywhere in the whole world. It is not limited to Murshidabad, it is not limited to India, but it is applicable to the whole world itself evaluation. Without evaluation, you cannot make a prediction, you cannot make a placement of a learner in the right direction. And that is why evaluation being a culmination of the instructional process, the teachers be oriented to make scientific evaluation programs through the knowledge of what we call Bloom's taxonomy, Bloom's and Anderson's taxonomy, and so on and so forth. That is the essence of outcome-based evaluation. Now let us see some more other aspects of higher education system. Higher education after occurring, a student should be what we call capable of doing something for his own bread and butter, but bread and butter. That is to say, a higher education student, that means who had gained higher education, he or he should be able to perform duties and other things which are capable of his own life and to the society as a whole. That is to say, if you're strictly making virtual learning, it is not a virtual bread and virtual butter that cannot lead us a virtual life. In the reality, if you want food and bread and butter, that should be what we call real specific skills that are acquired by learners. That means your virtual type of learning, online pedagogy, e-pedagogy, etc. They can be utilized as a supplementary one, an augmentary one, as a standby one, regulating and what we call articulating the so-called face-to-face instructional style, face-to-face mode in style. Why? We can use Swayam, we can have Swayam Prepare, we can have MOOCs, we can have e-Parsala, we can have any type of e-content, etc., etc. But all these things can be judicially been applied, not clearly been 100% online, no. a judicious application of this online technology, supplementary materials, articulating the regular mode of instruction that will be more advisable in the context of post-COVID period also, I do advocate. Why? Technology, we cannot be devoid of technology. We cannot be devoid of ICT. ICT and technology have progressed in many ways, advanced our knowledge system, no doubt about it. We all teachers should articulate the advancement in ICT, application of ICT, gadgets, etc., judiciously in the instructional patterns and even the evaluation outcomes of the learners. That is to say, our learners should be placed in such a way that they can live without technology also. Sometimes the current system, LCD system fails. The instruction system did not be stopped there. Instruction should go on. That is to say, even in the absence of current or LCD, we should have the instruction style, we should have the practical classes, so on and so forth. And again, when the current or the LCD resumes, we can restart the whole program. That means if you're devoid of a current connection or net connectivity, that means there is no education, no learning, no. We can have learning, we can have what you call connectivity without interconnectivity also sometimes if the net connection fails. And now, modern teachers and modern learners, the new generation learners, they are skilled in many, many aspects, whereas the conventional teachers, the traditional teachers, that means I do say that next generation learners, the learners of the present century, they are the internet learners, particularly next generation learners, those after the period of 1980, and those who are born before 1980, they are known as what you call pre-net generation learners. And therefore, there is a gap between next generation learners and pre-net generation learners. That gap, digital divide, should be bridged, and that is why the gap between the haves and have-nots that been created in this period, the smartphone awareness, what you call socio-psychological problems, and many students in many states across the country committed suicide. Even the parents also committed suicides. There are reported cases, and therefore we had to make a system of education where we can deepen the technology as a walking stick that we walk on. Why? On a walking stick, the manager, that is Suresh, Professor Suresh is the control over the walking stick, where to direct this walking stick. If there is what you call some deep pit, I can make a deviation, but not a cut lead on. If I miss a cut, that will carry my body and they are carrying me, that means I can do nothing. I am lying on this what you call coach, and the carrier, that is porters, are carrying me. That is why technology can be considered used as a what you call a walking stick that you walk on, not a crutch to lean on. And therefore, higher education system in the country should be capable of making online and offline both mastery, as well as making stride in long, bold strides to meet the challenges, the day-to-day challenges that are being posed in the situation, or the situation as the situation do demand. That is to say, no child be devoid of any skill. Every child in the system of learning and the system of instruction, they be proficient in one trade or two trades minimum, and not a jack of all trades, a master of none. No, but you see, we want what you call master of some trades, so that vocationally he is been rightly placed at his own will, at his own choices, so that he can have real food and real water, real bread and real butter, not virtual food and virtual water and virtual bread. And therefore, this we had to make sure that our education system should be in parallel with what we call advanced nations. No doubt we are applying technology. Earlier we had the renowned universities just like Nalanda, Takshashila and Vikramasila, where foreigners came and learned from here. Now we are speaking of foreign universities operating campus, etc. Some of the universities already started operating the campus, but universities so far not started their campus in India. Please remember, quality of education do depend upon the amount of budgetary allocations that we are earmarking on education. If you take the annual budget of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the annual budget of Aligarh Muslim University, you can see how many millions of dollars gap between AMU and MIT. And therefore, when we are speaking of quality, quality does not come from vacuum or space, nothing, but quality to come when we are heavily pumping our resources in investment. Of all the investment in education is the biggest investment, greatest investment. And that's why the modern concept of education as a planned developmental endeavor. Education is a planned developmental endeavor. We should plan. According to planning, we should make the developmental endeavor through education. And for the proper development of this educational setup, we should earmark minimum 6% of the GDP. Some of the advanced nations you can see they have earmarked 18%, 32%, even 36% of the GDP in education. But we never made an attempt to increase our GDP more than 2.5 something. I don't know the exact figure, but all education commissions had put forth such a suggestion for the increased allocation of budgetary allocations for our educational system, academic activities, and advancements. We have from our practice all vice chancellors in the country. They do face, even Central University vice chancellors do face that they have lack of financial allocation from the MHRD, from the UGC, so on and so forth. Of course, we are getting 10% salary assistance. What about our infrastructure strengthening, so on and so forth? And therefore, the academic finance should follow the academics and not vice versa. That should be the mantra if we want to keep quality in higher education. That means the financial allocation, that should be in proportion to the academic needs. That means the academics do not crunch the financial allocation should go in parallel with the academic requirements. Suppose AMU requires 2,000 crores for its annual budget. Let the MHRD allocate 2,000 crores in total for the advancement of the academic exercises that are being envisaged by the academic fraternity led by the Vice Chancellor of AMU. That is why all the Vice Chancellors in the VC's meeting summit are making a special plenary session on the financial allocation in the higher education system. Everywhere in every zone, zonal meetings, in the annual summit, etc. In the annual report also, we can see Association of Indian Universities also making a demand for increased financial allocation for universities in the country, especially the state-owned universities. Now we have seen, witnessing the coming of private universities and deemed to be universities. There are some good universities, but many are not at all function as per the declared policy of the UGC. UGC, we can see that it is coming under those coming under 2F or 12B category, but we had some other institutions not coming under 2F or 12B category. Some are deemed to be universities, some private universities, so on and so forth. That means our students should not be taxed 10% for their existence as well as completion of the course program. Philanthropy contribution is very essential as per the new educational policy. That means philanthropists and some of the corporate sector CSR funding, they can allocate their profit margin for the increased allocation for education institutions as a corpus fund. This is one of the recommendations of the NEP. Anyhow, education is a serious affair, whether it is pre-COVID or post-COVID or COVID-19 or COVID-20. Sometimes COVID-20 may emerge, but now our population, the whole scientific world are awakened not to have a COVID-20 in the coming 2 days. Why? We have made the precautionary measures not to have another COVID spread of COVID, though genetic variants do come. But our scientific community are all together in fight against it. the emergence of genetic variations in mutations of the virus combinations that are happening. But we can expect a new era, devoid of COVID-19 and its hazards, but we can have the challenges through what you call the technology-infused education, online and offline mode of instruction, face-to-face instruction, the teacher's guidance, the parental support, the societal links are being articulated, judiciously articulated so that we can make the country progressing rich, higher and higher. Is my observations. Thank you. I thank the authorities of Aligarh Muslim University for having given me a chance to speak on this wonderful webinar series section. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And your discussion was very fruitful. You have highlighted the learning instruction should be done in mother tongue, and Vice Chancellor Amarkantak Mahatma Gandhi University have said in a meeting that PhD can be written in a mother tongue or vernacular languages. I mean, I can imagine the situation when everyone can write their PhDs in their mother tongue and they feel free to express themselves. Also, the target audience will understand the utilization of that PhD. With these words, thank you very much, sir, for sparing some time for us. You have spared a large amount of time for us. Since at 10:50, you have joined this meeting. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Uh, Now, at the end, I would like to invite the convener of this program, Dr. Ayaz Ahmed Khan, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, to kindly propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Samad. Thank you, Samad. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, yes, you are audible. You are audible. You can.
Thank you. I'm very happy that our one-day national webinar on COVID-19 emergence of new era in higher education is conducted in fruitful manner, and webinar analyzed the emergent situation due to COVID-19 in the area of higher education in detail, and concluded with very fruitful suggestions. First of all praises are due to Almighty God for making this webinar successful. I, on behalf of Aligarh Muslim University Center, Jangipur, Murshidabad, extended my heartfelt thanks to our chief guest and renowned Professor Muhammad Shakil Ahmed Samdani, Dean Faculty of Law and Coordinator Nodal Office, EMU Centers, who despite of his busy schedule spared time to grace the occasion. I express my gratitude to the keynote speaker and eminent Professor Nasreen for accepting our invitation in very short notice. In her address, she enlightened us with various dimensions of COVID-19 situations and also discussed the coping strategy in the performing the teaching activities effectively. She also suggested various roles of teacher during this situation. Further, I am indebted to the resource person of webinar, Professor M.M. Ansari and Professor Kp Suresh for accepting our invitation. Professor Ansari is a great scholar and renowned person in the field of education and policy making. In his address, he focused the problem and issues faced by higher education with reference to the National Education Policy 2020. He discussed various ways and measures covered in the National Education Policy to improve the quality of higher education. He also highlighted the financial provisions of higher education. I proposed heartfelt thanks to him for his inspirational speech and providing us an opportunity to interact and learn. Further, the Professor Kp Suresh is also a great scholar and educationist in the area of higher education. As we know, he is responsible for the development of various teacher education institutions like School of Pedagogical Science in Kannur and Kottayam in Kerala. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presence and enlightening words. I express my great motivation for his motivation and valuable support to organize this webinar. Lastly, I owe special thanks to the members of organizing committee, Dr. Abdul Samad and Muhammad Umair, for their dedication and effort to organize this webinar. I extend my sincere thanks to all the participants for their active participation for the successful completion of this program. Once again, thank you, and thank you to all.
Thank you,
Samad,
sir,
over you.
for yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for proposing vote of thanks. At last, an important announcement for the participants. Kindly submit your feedback form, which will be mailed to you latest by 5 p.m. today. Your certificates will be emailed within 10 days. At last, thank you for your participation and giving time to us. Thank you very much.